been over a year and a half since we watched the Doomsday Machine for the first time. And at the time of our first time reaction, it was very controversial. Why? Because we thought the episode was okay. Everyone was waiting for us to get to this episode. It was one of those like, oh, can't wait for them to get to this. And I don't know if this was the first example, but it was definitely one of the biggest ones of like us kind of letting everyone down just in the sense of not loving it as much as they want us to. And as, being a channel that's actually honest when they watch stuff, that's one of the downsides of it.
Mhm.
With that being said, I don't think like we hated this episode or anything when we first watched it. I remember my kind of critique being, yeah, we have Captain Decker, which is William Wyndham is the actor. That character and William Wyndham's performance is obviously stands out here and is really good. Other than that, I didn't really care for anything in the episode. That was my impression the first time I watched it.
Sometimes like people like I don't like things in movies. It's like oh, it's like oh, that's the point. It's supposed to make you feel like that. And usually I'm like, well, that doesn't fucking matter. If I don't like it, I don't like it. Or if and like, but I was able to like take a step back and appreciate Decker's performance and how annoying and like wrong he was and how like driven by vengeance and how much of an idiot he was. Still watching it read back, I'm like, this guy sucks. I do love the whole like just wrench in our formula of the Enterprise and how they do things. And then when someone else comes aboard who is a Starfleet guy, but who's been stricken with horrible guilt and vengeance for like what happened to his entire ship, it's kind of neat to watch. And then we get a little fun aside with just Kirk and Scotty on the
The Constellation.
Constellation, yeah, and then just getting to figure stuff out. I do appreciate it more. I don't know. How about you?
Well, after rewatching it, I think I like it even less.
Really?
Now, I will say, I'm not saying this is a bad episode of Star Trek or anything. I mean, like I said at the time when we watched it the first time, there's things to like about it. There's good stuff in it. Obviously, William Wyndham's performance as Captain Decker stands out as the number one thing. Both his performance of that character and also like even the makeup and stuff on him. They really made him look like he had gone through a traumatic event. Obviously, that's really good. And if you even said that was the best guest performance of TOS, I couldn't even really argue with you. But other than that, I really just don't find this that strong of an episode of the original series. So we'll break it down. The one thing I will say is like, look, if you're someone out here that's like, oh, I watched this as a kid and the Doomsday Machine terrified me, or this was the first episode of Star Trek I watched. Nothing that I say here is going to change any of that. So that's not that's not really relevant to the episode. The first thing, Kirk's green sweater. He's wearing his green sweater
That's
in
right.
this.
That's
And
right.
I did the Leo meme.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, the green sweater. I don't know if it's the first time he wore it, but that was cool to see.
You know what you didn't do that for? Was for Uhura because she wasn't there. And neither was Chekhov.
Well, yeah. Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even put the Chekhov thing together, but this was season 2, so
Yeah.
you'd think he would be there, but he
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah. Both of them not there.
Kind of rare, but it did happen. Uhura just isn't in the episode because I didn't remember her not being there specifically. So I was like already going into an episode that I like hadn't loved, and I'm like, oh, it's one of like the 5 or 6 without Uhura. This kind of sucks.
Yeah,
Okay.
not a good start.
Yeah. So they come across the constellation, which has been, basically destroyed, and they beam over to it. And once again, the lighting is great in this episode too, over on the constellation, all dark and dim. And I love how it's the same set, but they just rip some stuff out.
It's so practical. I love it. It's like it's obvious, but it doesn't like take away. But it's just I just love like the easy, not easy, but like like simple filmmaking. This why build another one? Just use the same one. Just change a couple things.
Yeah, and then they come across Decker, and I really loved the acting here between Decker and Kirk in this scene, or obviously William Shatner and William Wyndham in this scene.
Where's your crew?
On the third planet.
There is no third planet.
And I love the moment where they're asking him, they're like, we gotta go, and Decker says, I won't leave my ship, and Kirk says, there's no ship to leave. Great moment.
Yeah, also great with that where it's like you're tired. Where I think he tells him like you beat him down to the planet. It's like I know they're it's like you don't think I know that about like the planet being blew up. Like
Yeah.
the planet blew up. He's like, you don't think like and his acting there. It's like oh God.
Don't you think I know that? There was, but not anymore.
Yeah, really good scene. Probably, I mean, honestly, could be one of the best scenes of the episode, to be honest.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
So yeah, they get Decker out of there, but Kirk and Scotty stay behind because I think they want to make some, see if they can salvage the ship or at least get it out of there.
Yeah, and then the Doomsday Machine shows up, and I actually haven't brought this up yet, but I'm rewatching these with the original effects on the box set. When we watched them originally, we had to watch the remastered because we didn't have the box set, and that's what's on Paramount Plus. I'm guessing that's how you watched them this time as well.
Yeah, Paramount Plus.
It's like shocking, but in almost every comparison, I prefer the original effects, and it's the same thing here. So like the Doomsday Machine, yeah, like it looks kind of silly, but it at least like looks cool. Like I'm interested in it. And from what I remember, the remastered, it's just like a CGI cone. Is that about right?
This looks like a space doobie.
Yeah, and it still kind of does, but it's like the inside of it is all like lit up and there's like fire inside of it and stuff. Like I don't know, maybe it's just because I prefer the like the practicality of it, even though it's still a special effect. But like, yeah, so the original effects for sure. There wasn't much to notice in Balance of Terror in like original effect wise, but here I definitely noticed the difference because the Doomsday Machine is so focused on so many shots of it. So that was an improvement for me watching it with the original effects. But that shows up, and this is when Decker just turns into an asshole. And I get that he went through this traumatic event, and I understand his character motivation, but particularly in this act of the episode where he takes command, I don't really buy that like that's what's going on. Like to me, he didn't come off as like I've been through this. I got to do whatever I can to destroy this thing. Like that is in there, but then he also just seems like an asshole on top of that.
Yeah, maybe it does, but I don't know because he tries to save his crew, like, or he tried to save his crew. We didn't see his process, but he tried to save his crew. So it's weird that he just does a complete switch, where it's like, if we blow up, we blow up. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
we're just gonna fight this thing. It's like, well, it didn't work the first time. I don't know if you tried fighting it in a ship, but yeah, it's just weird. Like, I needed to see more of, I gotta destroy it. He's more just like, look right here. It's like you have no. I wouldn't have that look on your face. I know the whole thing about empathy is like people, handle things differently. It's like I always think about my thought process. Like, well, if I just caused 400 people, my people, to be destroyed, I'd be way more cautiously scared and like not to ruin this ship. But he thinks he's trying to save everybody by attacking it, but it's just not the right thing to do.
yeah, and also just I needed more of how he acted in that first scene throughout the whole episode. Like his first scene, he was so like manic and all over the place. And I understand eventually you're gonna come down from that a little bit,
Mhm.
that state. But when he's taking over command and stuff, I know he has to look, well enough to be able to be in command, otherwise he'd be relieved by Bones.
Yeah.
But he just, like you said, he just turns so instantly into this like smug ass. I don't know. To me, that doesn't come off as, oh, I've been through this traumatic event and now I'm trying to do anything I can to redeem myself. The only reasoning logic, I guess, would be like maybe that's how he was as a captain anyway. And then we just have to like headcanon that.
Yeah, the two theory. Yeah, one theory is like that is how he is as a captain, or two, this traumatic event just like flipped like a horrible switch in him, and he just became this like this was his coping mechanism is to be this asshole.
Either way, whatever it just for me didn't it wasn't the right thing for me. Like I just couldn't get connected to his character. I just wish his character had been more like what we saw in his first scene and also debatably his last scene before his death. Like where he's at his most manic state. That I was much more into. All the, just jerk stuff on the bridge, I didn't really care.
Yeah, maybe it was just to have a juxtaposition to look how great of a Captain Kirk is, and like that whole thing where everyone in Starfleet sucks
Yeah.
except for people in the Enterprise.
And I also do love those Spock's reaction while this is all going on, because Bones is like, Spock, you can't let him do this. And Spock just, stone face, like, he's my superior.
Yeah.
Nothing I can do. He's like, if you can relieve him medically, go ahead, but I can't do anything else.
It's a fun scene with Kirk and Scott. They both have like a guy down there, a red shirt down there with them, and Scotty's like, "Come along, lad." And then like right after Scotty says that, Kirk's like, "Washburn, you get in over here."
Still in fair shape, I might coax them and get moving. Come along, lad.
Washburn, you get in there. Let's see what we can do about this viewing screen.
So like, Scotty asked this guy to follow him. Kirk's like, "No, you come over here."
I didn't notice that. That's great.
It was like really quick. I'm like, "Oh, that's hilarious."
And speaking of Kirk and Scotty over there, I didn't like it in the sense that it like takes Kirk out of the episode, and we talked about in Balance of Terror how focusing on Kirk, was a strength of the show because we didn't get to see everybody, but we got to see Kirk. And here you don't really, I mean, Kirk's in it and he has stuff to do, but he's not on the Enterprise. So like it almost takes him out of the episode for a good chunk of it
Hmm.
because the episode wants to have like Decker as the center, with interacting with Spock and stuff, but I think that also damages the episode. My favorite parts are the parts with Kirk and Decker at the same time. When he calls into the ship is one of the best scenes.
You are speaking to a senior officer, Kirk.
Give me Spock.
He's like, I don't give a fuck who you are. Put Spock on the phone.
And then he starts trying to give orders remotely over the phone. He's like, Sulu, draw back the ship. And he's like, Kirk, I'm in command. This other guy. And then he tells Spock, he's like, Spock, relieve him of duty. And he like gets him relieved over the phone. Just so great.
So great. And it's just like, it also helped, I mean, it helped build that relationship between Spock and Kirk. Like, that's my guy, right? Like, what do you mean you're in command? I didn't give you, you're not in command of my ship. There's only one person who can be in command of my ship when I'm not there. And that's my best friend. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, so that was probably my favorite part of the episode.
Another funny line where Scotty does a classic, fixes it last second or whatever. He's able to like get the ship going. And after he does, Kirk says, Scotty, you've just earned your pay for the week.
So Kirk is able to get Decker relieved through the phone, essentially. And Spock relieves him, and he's like, I don't want to get you arrested. And another great line. He's like, you're bluffing. Vulcans never bluff. And it's like, yeah, that's true.
Mm.
So he relieves him, and then Decker goes out into the hallway with the red shirt, and then tries to turn on him. But this is like the most competent red shirt we've ever seen. Like, he's a semi-competent fighter, and they actually have a really good fight scene. Like, it wasn't just, and typically you just see the quick, like, just take him out or something.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they do like a full fight scene. It was really good.
Yeah, very surprising. Maybe that's to show that Decker isn't as strong as Kirk, because Kirk would have taken him out right away.
And Decker just went through all of this on his
Yeah,
own ship.
yeah.
I loved in one moment the red shirt has him in like a full Nelson. They're like doing a full fight.
Spock has a classic line here where it's like, how heavy does that weigh? 937.875 megatons, sir. And I think Kirk goes, 937. It's like, like one of those classic, okay.
Yeah, just so great. And then after Decker gets away from the red shirt is when he basically goes to make his, Independence Day sacrifice moment. Honestly, I thought that was the end of the episode. I forgot. There's a whole act of this episode after Decker sacrifices himself with Kirk and Scotty, actually destroying the Doomsday Machine. In my memory, I had remembered it as Decker sacrificed himself and destroyed it. So after he was dead, and then it started to come back to me like, oh yeah, there's this whole end of the episode where Kirk says something to the effect of like, maybe his death doesn't have to be for nothing. We can destroy it. And like, honestly, I don't think any of it is like needed. Like, they probably should have just like moved the episode around so that his sacrifice was the end. Because like thematically, that's like the end of the episode essentially. He's the main character per se of the episode. He sacrifices himself, redemption, all of that. And then it's just like 15 minutes of Kirk blowing up the Doomsday Machine.
Yeah, I do remember him sacrificing himself, and that leads to the idea of how to destroy it, but I forgot how much long after that until it ends.
50 minutes.
Those extra 5, man, let me tell you. But, I don't know. I do like how this Decker guy, he can't even get a full redemption where he can't even destroy the thing. He just creates the idea of how to destroy the thing. I mean, it still has a slight redemption arc, I guess. But I like how it's not a full one, like it doesn't destroy the whole thing.
Okay, yeah, like doesn't make him the hero in the end.
And I do love that classic last second tension where it's like Scotty's trying to fix the transporter so he can beam Kirk back in before because he has to fly the ship into the Doomsday Machine, and he's like, all right, now would be a good time. Now would be a good time, and like weirdly Spock gives him like the right, like, oh, do this. Very last second, beams in. It's like.
Yeah, that was good, yeah. And we got to also talk about probably the other most memorable thing from this episode, the score. They really liked it, so they used it. I kind of got tired of it, but this is its original episode, so like I can't blame it for its future use. In this original episode, it is probably the best score up to that point, or one of the best. Is it really when Decker's driving into it, it's like, all right, yeah. So I understand why that's an iconic score. I get that. And then after they destroy the Doomsday Machine, the ending is just Kirk and Spock, and Kirk just goes, "Hey, Spock, remember how they had nuclear weapons in the 20th century? That's kind of like this." And Spock's like, "Oh, I hope there's not more." And Kirk's like, "Yeah, one was enough." And then that's the ending. It's like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, a little like,
on the nose,
yeah,
yeah.
about like what that's what the Doomsday Machine is, right? A nuclear weapon, and it's like how dangerous, whatever. It's fine, it's whatever. I get it.
It's just weird when you're talking about like nuclear weapons to make a weird joke about it. And
Yeah,
it was
but
just kind of weak overall. It was just like, oh, did this even need to be in here?
yeah, it's like I don't need to comment on the time.
I'm sure this happened a lot in TOS, and I'm just not remembering. But it was about as close as you can get to just like them, you know, pulling up a chair. All right, so this is what we meant by this. Just explaining. It's like, yeah, you really don't need to do that.
Way back in the 20th century, the H-bomb was the ultimate weapon. Their Doomsday Machine.
Yeah, I'm sorry for those of you out there. Some of you are probably like, oh, you still don't get it. Whatever, fine, maybe I don't get it. Whatever. I don't think this episode's bad. I wouldn't even put it in the bottom half of the series. It's like a decent episode. I just don't understand. Like, aside from William Wyndham's performance as Decker and the score, like I just don't understand how some people said this is the best thing Star Trek ever. And it's like for a lot of stuff I can understand, but like unless you're talking about your personal connection to this, I don't understand from a quality standpoint how this can be considered one of the best things. I just don't. I don't know. It's just lost on me.
Yeah, I'll take that. Like how, like me anyway, how I choose my favorite movies. A lot of it is based on personal experience. You know what I mean? It's like I'm sure there's better movies than my favorite movie, but it's like my personal experience with that movie. It's always gonna, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
sure, yeah.
yeah. So do I think this is the best episode of Star Trek? Hell no. Does pretty well. You know what I mean? But definitely not one of my favorites. More appreciation on rewatch. You know what I mean? But that might be, like I said, just like, oh, TOS, so great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I went into it with a pretty open mind, especially after having my mind changed with Balance of Terror, and like I feel like if I was ever in a state to really like this episode, it would have been now. So maybe it's just not for me. Maybe that's just what it comes down to. But I also fully acknowledge, like I know I'm in the minority on this. It's not two or three people that are saying it's the best ever. Like this is a highly praised episode, so whatever. It's maybe that's just me, but I think it's overrated.
damn. Well, don't you know that that was Decker's dad from Star Trek: The Motion Picture? Doesn't that change anything? Or like now, like
That does actually slightly make it better. I'll give it that.
even though you never mentioned,
Even though it's never on screen or a canon, yeah.
yeah, it's like
And the character just disappears into space
it's
or
like
whatever.
people like retcon, like oh, Darth Vader kept Boba Fett around because it reminded him of Rex. Like, create all the head theories you want. It's like it doesn't fucking matter.
Let us know what episode you guys want us to revisit from TOS next. It could be one like the ones we've done so far that you think we didn't fully appreciate and could look back on, or it could be ones that we loved a lot that you want us to talk more in depth about. So let us know and we will do that. Alex needs to go to sleep.